with the Eisenhower Media Network, this group of retired admirals, generals, and colonels, we took out a full-page ad in the New York Times at the very beginning of that war, calling for a ceasefire, and the headline of the ad was supposed to be, "The U.S. provoked the war in Ukraine," and the New York Times would not allow us to run it as an ad. They would not allow us to use that headline.
Why? But it's an ad.
Right. It doesn't seem right, but I mean, so that was on that thing, but I mean, in the run up to the...
Wait, what? So this is another, like, I don't think North Korea has a propaganda initiative as comprehensive and aggressive as the one I saw after the Ukraine war started. Like, it was just like, you know, the New York Open was taking Russian names off the scoreboard. New York Times was editorializing in other people's advertisements. Like, what was that?
Yeah. War fever. I mean, the reality is that you can kind of control what the population thinks by the information that you give to them. So, you know, the U.S. is propagandizing its own people. You know, every country does that. But, you know, there's a lot of sins of omission in terms of the news that people get. And you never hear Russia's point of view. I mean, it's amazing to me. You know, they wouldn't let us hear what Osama bin Laden was saying after, you know, 9/11.
I noticed.
I mean, they don't let us hear what the people in China are saying. I mean, I dug around. A friend of mine sent me, you know, a speech by the defense minister of China, and he's saying, we're not looking to be enemies with the U.S. We're not. We're looking to develop our country and grow, and we can peacefully coexist together. The world is big enough for both of the U.S., but the explicit policy of the United States, if you read these, I mean, I don't know, what the hell is this ice cream guy doing reading these national security documents? I don't know, but anyhow, I read them. And it is the policy of the U.S. to maintain hegemony. And I didn't know what that word meant. But it's the policy of the U.S. that if any country begins to develop economically or socially, you know, toward the level that the U.S. is at, that country is by definition an enemy. The policy of the U.S. is that we must have full spectrum dominance. And why should 5% of the world control what's going on in the world?
So when you tried to put this ad in the New York Times, or did put the ad, but with a different headline. Mm-hmm. By the way, what'd they change the headline to?
I don't remember.
But something that didn't tell the truth about how this war started. Yeah.
Well, the body did.
Yeah.
the body count.
Yeah, they're assuming most people read the headline.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Nobody was saying anything like that then. I mean,
that's right.
I know. I was saying it. Got in a lot of trouble for it.
All right.
Well, yeah, it just seemed obvious to me. But very few people were saying anything like that. What kind of response did you get from people you know?
Mostly positive. And there were a bunch that disagreed. You know, I actually have my wife was born in Kyrgyzstan, which is one of the countries that the Soviet Union had kind of taken over. She's never lived in Russia, but she's a Russian speaker.
Yes.
And she lost some friends because of the stand that I took. against that war in Ukraine.
Really?
Yeah.
Because they were offended.
Yeah. That, I think for countries that live, that are located around the borders of the Soviet Union, countries that had been invaded by the Soviet Union
and mistreated.
Right. They are really down on Russia.
For sure, they are.
And they're very down on socialism, and they're very down on and they believe, they have a history. They've been invaded, and they're scared that that they're going to get invaded. And their feeling is if we just let Russia go and have its way with Ukraine, that they're going to be next.
Of course.
And I don't think there's any truth to that. I think clearly Putin is not doing very well, invading one country. I don't think he's looking to go invade another one.
He already runs the biggest country in the world. So yeah. No, I agree with that. It's not, praise of Putin to note that there's no evidence he wants territorial expansion at all. Were there any politicians, so that was like in the first few months after the war started that you said this?
Yeah.
Were there any politicians who were saying anything like that you saw?
That's interesting.
Because a lot of
I don't really remember any politicians being on our side.
No, including ones you knew personally and had supported in the past. They weren't saying that.
Yep. Yeah.
Here's a fact of life you may not learn until you're older, but I'm going to tell you now. It's very hard to have a good time if you're wearing bad boots. In fact, it may be impossible, and that's why you need Tecovas. As a matter of fact, you don't just need them, you owe them to yourself. Tecovas makes Western boots for everybody, ranchers, real ranchers, lifelong cowboys, first-time boot buyers, and anyone in between. Every Tecovas boot is handcrafted, made by hand, with over 200 meticulous steps for a broken-in feel right out of the box. You don't have to compromise between looks and quality. You can have them both. Whether it's a long day or a big night, Tecovas are built to last and impressed. You wouldn't believe the compliments people here get when they wear them out, which they do. Right now, get 10% off at tecovas.com/Tucker when you sign up for email and text alerts. That's 10% off at Tecova, TECOVAS.com/Tucker. And some of those politicians, because you've always been against war since for the 40 years I've paid attention, you were supporting anti-war politicians, but they made an exception for Ukraine.
Yeah, that's true.
What I noticed.
Yeah.
What was that about?
Maybe because there was so much public kind of empathy for the people in Ukraine. I think that a lot of it has to do with what information do people have.
Yes.
The only information people had is Russia came in and invaded with its army.
Yes.
And they didn't hear what happened before, what led up to it. And they didn't think about, which this ad that we ran did, what would the U.S. do if there were Russian missiles lined up along the Mexican border aimed at the U.S.? I mean, it was the same situation.
Of course it is.
And I've got no question that the U.S. would invade and get rid of them.
Of course. We'd be occupying Tijuana right now.
Yeah.
And I can see why, by the way. You don't want other people's missiles aimed from your border. That's pretty close.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. So did you have access to information other people didn't?
Well,
because you said that most people had this view because they didn't know better, because they didn't have access to other perspectives, to the truth, to the history of this? What were you reading that they weren't?
I just been following the issue over time since the fall of since the end of the Cold War.
Yes.
So where do I get the information? Well, the stuff about the committee to expand NATO, that was in the mainstream press.
But you already had the framework for understanding this because you've been paying attention to this issue.
Yeah, and you think about most people, it's kind of a luxury to have the time to pay attention to an issue like this. I mean, most people are focused on the day to day.
Yeah.
Just trying to get through the day, and the messages that you get are essentially the messages that the government wants you to get.
Man, that was not the way it was supposed to work.
No, it wasn't. We were supposed to have freedom of the press, but I mean, even when there was a free press, it was still very controlled. I mean, so I say there was a free press, not that free. I think a lot of times the press is self-censoring.
Yes.
I don't know.
How can you have a democracy without free access to information?
Yeah, I don't think you can. I mean, now, with the internet, I mean, you could say that there is free access, but you really need to kind of dig, and you get a very different perspective if you read the news in the U.S. versus if you read the news in some other country in the world, talking about the same situation. So we get a U.S.-centric view.
U.S. government-centric.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't personally know anyone who's volunteering to fight Russia in Ukraine. I don't personally know anybody. I've never met anybody outside of D.C. who wants another Middle Eastern war. So, in other words, the priorities of the government bear no resemblance to the priorities of the population.
Yes, there are well done, rigorous studies on that issue. That you look at the line of what do regular old people in the country want versus what does the country do, and they're not congruent very much. Then you look at the line of what do the elites want, what do the really wealthy people and corporations want, and what does the country do, and it's much more aligned.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can hit the little bell on there and get notifications every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that also.